Welcome to KOT Aero, knowledge on tap for the aerospace industry. Subscribe for free at kotaero.com. All right, let's dive into it.
Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're taking a deep dive into something you probably don't think about much. The interior of an airplane cabin. You know, the seats, the walls, those overhead bins.
Right.
But instead of legroom or in-flight movies, we're focusing on fire safety.
Okay.
Our source is the Federal Aviation Regulations, specifically Section 25.853. It's all about what materials can be used inside an airplane cabin.
Interesting.
And to guide us through these regulations, we have our expert here. So what stands out to you as a key takeaway?
Well, one of the big things is the focus on flame resistance for the materials, not making everything fireproof.
Yeah, why not just make everything completely fireproof?
You see, it comes down to practicality. Fireproof materials are often heavy, which would impact fuel efficiency and performance.
I see.
And they can be rigid, hard to shape for an airplane cabin.
Makes sense. So it's about slowing down fire, not completely stopping it.
Exactly. And the regulations get very specific about the materials and testing.
Oh, like seat cushions, for example.
Right, seat cushions. They have to pass strict fire tests. After all, passengers are in direct contact with them.
And speaking of seats, I noticed something interesting. The rules for seat cushions apply to all passenger seats, except those for the flight crew. Why would that be?
Well, think about it. In an emergency, pilots need to get out of the cockpit fast.
Right.
Imagine if their seats were so fire-resistant it slowed them down.
That's a good point. It's not just the materials, but how they impact actions in an emergency.
Absolutely. And the same goes for other parts of the cabin. The walls, ceilings, partitions, galleys, large cabinets. Airplanes carrying 20 or more people have stricter standards for these.
So bigger plane, higher risk, more protection.
Yeah, think of it like this. In a small plane, a fire has less space to spread. But in a larger aircraft with more people and fuel, the risk is greater.
Okay, so it's about managing risk with layers of protection. But going back to the materials for a second, how do they actually work? What makes them different from the fabric on my couch at home?
There are all sorts of fire-resistant materials, each with its own properties.
Okay.
Some are naturally flame-resistant due to their chemical makeup. Others have special coatings that prevent them from burning easily.
And how do they test these materials? I'm guessing it's not just holding a lighter to them.
Oh, no. These tests are super rigorous.
Wow.
They simulate real-world fires. Like, they might expose a material to flames for a specific time and measure how quickly it ignites, how much it burns, and how much smoke it produces.
I bet.
They also test how the material holds up under extreme heat or exposure to different liquids.
That's impressive. It's good to know they're going through such thorough testing.
It's all about creating layers of safety. By using materials that resist fire, burn slowly, and produce less smoke, they make the cabin safer in case of a fire.
Okay, so we've talked about the materials, but what about the design of the cabin itself? How does that factor into fire safety?
Well, the cabin design is all about compartmentalizing potential fires. It's about creating barriers to stop a fire from spreading quickly throughout the plane.
Ah, like fire breaks within the cabin.
Yeah, exactly. Think about those doors between the pilot compartment and the main cabin, or the walls around the galleys and lavatories. Those help contain a fire, giving everyone more time to react and get out.
It's like building firewalls into the structure itself.
Exactly. And it's not just physical walls. They also use fire-blocking materials inside the walls, ceilings, and floors to stop flames from spreading through hidden spaces.
Wow, it's like a hidden network of fire protection. Amazing how much detail goes into designing a safe airplane cabin.
And it's always evolving. New materials and technologies come out, and the regulations are updated.
Speaking of updates, I noticed something else. The regulations still require ashtrays in lavatories. But smoking is banned on planes, right? So why would they still need ashtrays?
Well, it's about being prepared, even in non-smoking areas. It's to prevent someone trying to sneak a smoke from starting a fire. The rules for ashtrays are very specific, They must be fully enclosed, fire-resistant, and capable of containing a fire.
I never would have guessed there were so many rules for an ashtray.
It shows how much attention goes into every detail of aircraft safety.
Okay, so we've talked about the materials, compartmentalization, even ashtrays. Clearly, a lot of thought goes into preventing fires. But what if a fire actually does happen? What are the systems for putting it out and protecting everyone?
Well, that's when things get really interesting.
Oh,
Airplanes have special fire suppression systems for different parts of the aircraft,
really?
like the engines, the cargo hold, and the cabin itself.
Wow, okay. Tell me more about those.
Let's talk about those fire suppression systems. They're a fascinating mix of engineering and safety, all designed to keep you safe up in the air.
Okay, I'm ready. I guess when I think of fire extinguishers, I picture those red canisters you see everywhere, in offices and homes.
Yeah.
Is that what they use on planes too?
Not exactly. Airplanes use special systems, tailored for different areas. Like the engines have their own systems with agents designed just for jet engine fires.
That makes sense. You wouldn't use the same thing on an engine fire as you would on a kitchen grease fire, right?
What about the cabin itself? What kind of systems do they have in there?
The cabin systems are designed to act really fast. They usually use halon gas or something similar to put out fires. It works by stopping the chemical reaction that makes a fire burn.
Halon gas.
Yeah.
Is that safe for people to breathe?
That's a good question. It's something they've thought about carefully.
Okay.
Halon can be dangerous in large amounts, but the amount used in airplanes is small and disperses quickly. Plus, flight attendants are trained to evacuate everyone right away after the system goes off.
That makes me feel better. So if there's a fire in the cabin, this halon gas would activate, put out the fire, and then everyone would get out as fast as possible.
Yes, exactly. It's a multi-layered approach, focusing on putting the fire out and keeping everyone safe. Okay, so that's the engines and the cabin covered. What about other places on a plane, like the cargo hold? Do they have fire suppression systems there too?
Oh, absolutely. The cargo hold is really important when it comes to fire safety.
Mm-hmm.
Cargo fires can be tricky because they often start deep inside luggage or freight, which makes them hard to find and get to.
That sounds scary. How do they deal with a fire in a place like that?
Larger aircraft have sophisticated systems in the cargo hold.
Okay.
They use smoke detectors, heat sensors, and sometimes even video cameras to keep an eye on things.
It's like a security system that's always watching out for fires.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. If a fire is detected, the system automatically releases a fire extinguishing agent into the cargo hold.
So they don't actually send firefighters into the cargo hold during the flight?
No, thankfully not. The systems are designed to work on their own, putting out the fire before it can spread and cause too much damage. Once the plane lands, firefighters will go in and check to make sure everything's out and see how much damage was done.
Got it. So we've got the engines, the cabin, and the cargo hold covered. Seems like every part of the plane is pretty well protected against fires. But what about the people? I mean, the pilots and flight attendants, what role do they play in fire safety?
Oh, the human element is absolutely critical to fire safety on a plane.
I can imagine.
Pilots and flight attendants go through intense training to handle all kinds of emergencies, including fires.
So it's more than just knowing how to use a fire extinguisher.
Oh, yeah. It's about knowing how to manage a fire in the very specific environment of an aircraft. It's a whole other ballgame. They need to quickly figure out what's going on, make tough decisions under pressure, and work together to make sure everyone is safe.
Wow.
They have to know how to talk to air traffic control, how to start emergency procedures, and how to get passengers out safely.
That's a lot to handle. They must have to be super calm in those situations.
Definitely. Their training prepares them for those high-stress moments. And it's not just about reacting to fires. They're always looking out for potential problems and trying to prevent them.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Think about those pre-flight safety demonstrations. The ones that we've all seen a million times. They might seem routine, but they're super important for preparing everyone for emergencies. Reminding people to fasten their seatbelts, stow their carry-on luggage, and know where the exits are. All those little things help create a safer environment.
So even those basic things contribute to overall safety.
Absolutely. Every little bit helps. And it's not just the crew's responsibility. Passengers need to be aware too, follow instructions, and speak up if they see something that doesn't look right.
That's a good point. We often think of safety as someone else's job, but we all play a part.
Exactly. We're all in this together. And by working together, we can help make flying one of the safest ways to travel.
Well said. Now, you mentioned fire extinguishers earlier. I'm curious about those. What kind do they use on airplanes?
Let's dive into that next.
Okay, fire extinguishers. I've always wondered about those. What kind do they use on planes? Are they like the ones you see in buildings, or are they special?
That's a common question. And you're right, they are different from what you'd find in a building.
What makes them so different?
Well, they have to be light and small. Every pound on an airplane matters for fuel efficiency.
Right, makes sense.
And they need to be good at putting out different kinds of fires. electrical fires, flammable liquid fires, you name it.
So it's like a multi-purpose extinguisher, but smaller and lighter?
Pretty much. But there's another big difference. They have to be designed to not cause a lot of damage.
Damage? What do you mean by that?
Think about using a regular water extinguisher in an airplane cabin.
Okay.
The water could damage electronics or even hurt someone with the force of the spray.
Ah, I see your point.
Yeah.
So it's not just putting out the fire. It's about doing it safely.
Exactly. That's why airplane extinguishers usually use agents that are effective but won't harm the plane or the people.
Like what? What kind of agent do they use?
One common one is halon 1211. It's a gas that stops the fire's chemical reaction. It's fast and doesn't leave a mess.
So a clean and efficient way to put out fire.
Yeah. They also sometimes use a dry chemical powder, which smothers the fire by cutting off its oxygen.
Okay, so they have these special extinguishers on the plane, but who's actually trained to use them?
Mostly the flight attendants. They have to know how to identify different types of fires and which extinguisher to use.
They're like the first line of defense up in the air?
You could say that. They have to act fast in an emergency. And it's not just about extinguishers. They're trained to assess the situation, talk to the pilots, and even evacuate passengers if needed.
Wow, they have a lot of responsibility.
They do, and they do an incredible job. They're true heroes when it comes to keeping us safe while flying.
Definitely. We tend to think about pilots a lot, but flight attendants are just as important for safety. So we've talked about the materials, the fire systems, and the amazing crew. Anything else important about fire safety on planes?
I think the key thing to remember is that fire safety is always evolving. New technology comes out, research continues, so things change and improve.
So what we've learned today is just a glimpse of a much bigger picture.
That's right. The aviation industry is always working to make flying safer.
That's good to know. It's amazing how much work goes into making our flights safe.
It's a testament to how much we value safety, something we should all appreciate every time we fly.
Well said. I think our listeners are finishing this deep dive with a much better understanding of how many layers of protection are in place when they're on a plane, and maybe even a new appreciation for the people who keep them safe.
I hope so. If there's one thing I want everyone to remember, it's that fire safety on a plane is a shared responsibility. We all need to be aware, follow instructions, and report anything that seems off.
That's a great message to end on. Thanks for joining us today.
It was my pleasure.
And to everyone listening, fly safe.